Carrion was more than a prison planet, it was a tomb for the forgotten. Orbiting a dying star, the planet's surface was a wasteland of blackened rock and perpetual storms. Below the surface, the Malek Syndicate had carved out a labyrinthine fortress, its halls echoing with the cries of captives and the hum of alien machinery. Here, monsters were shackled not only in body but in soul, their wills bent to serve their masters. Captain Liao Voss had no intention of becoming one of them. Her ship, the Eclipse, hummed softly as it hovered in a shadowy canyon near the fortress. Liao double-checked her equipment: EMP grenades, a plasma pistol, and a hacking tool she'd borrowed from a Terran black market dealer. Everything she needed to break into one of the galaxy's most secure prisons. "This is insane, even for you," crackled the voice of her AI companion, Rook, through her earpiece. "Do you know how many bounty hunters have died trying to get into this place?" "Nope," Liao muttered, adjusting her cloak to blend with the rocky terrain. "But I'm guessing it's a big number. Big enough that we should leave before you add yourself to the count." Liao smirked. "Not an option. Dracos is here, and I'm not leaving without him." The AI sighed in resignation as Liao scaled the outer walls of the fortress, her suit's magnetic grips allowing her to cling to the jagged surface. She moved with practiced precision, avoiding security drones and automated turrets. The Syndicate didn't take chances any intruder would be vaporized on sight. Once inside, Liao activated her cloaking device, her form shimmering and vanishing as she navigated the labyrinth. The air was thick with the stench of oil and ozone, the sound of clanging metal reverberating through the halls. She passed cells containing strange, exotic creatures, each one more grotesque than the last. Her heart twisted at the sight of them, but she couldn't stop. Dracos was the priority. Her path led her to a massive vault door, reinforced with layers of alien alloys. It radiated an ominous energy, a silent warning to anyone foolish enough to approach. Liao didn't hesitate. She planted her hacking tool on the control panel, letting Rook do the rest. "Give me 60 seconds, Rook said. "Make it 30, Liao replied, glancing down the corridor. Syndicate patrols weren't far off. The vault door creaked open just as a pair of guards rounded the corner. Liao dove behind a crate, her pistol silenced as she took them down with precision shots. She stepped into the vault, her breath catching at the sight before her. Dracos. The creature was enormous, his coiled body taking up most of the cavernous chamber. His scales shimmered like molten silver, reflecting the dim light, and his wings, bound by glowing electromagnetic chains, pulsed faintly as though alive. His head was bowed, his long, serrated horns grazing the ground. But what struck Liao most were his eyes' golden orbs that seemed to burn with a smoldering anger, even in his subdued state. As if sensing her presence, Dracos' eyes opened fully, fixing her with an unblinking stare. His voice rumbled, deep and resonant, shaking the air around her. "You are not one of them." "No," Liao replied, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her chest. "I'm here to get you out." Draco studied her, his gaze penetrating. "Do you know what I am?" "A dragon," she said simply. "The last of your kind. And the Syndicate's favorite weapon." His lips curled into something that might have been a grimace or a smile. "You are bold, human. But foolish. The chains you see are not the only ones that bind me." "Yeah, well," Liao said, pulling an EMP grenade from her belt. "Let's break a few and see what happens." She activated the grenade and hurled it at the chains. The explosion sent a shockwave rippling through the chamber, the electromagnetic restraints crackling before going dark. Draco surged to his feet, his full size dwarfing Liao as his wings unfurled, shaking off centuries of confinement. His roar was deafening, a sound of rage and triumph that reverberated through the fortress. The alarms went off almost immediately. "Company's coming," Rook warned through her earpiece. "Let them," Dracos growled, plasma flickering at the edges of his maw. "I owe them a proper farewell." Liao grinned, adrenaline surging through her veins. Then let's make it memorable. The first wave of Syndicate guards stormed the vault, weapons blazing. Dracos's plasma breath turned the air into a swirling inferno, vaporizing the attackers in an instant. Leah covered his flank, her pistol picking off soldiers attempting to flank them. The chaos spread as more explosions rocked the fortress, the prisoners in nearby cells taking advantage of the commotion to riot. "This way!" Leah shouted, leading Dracos through a side passage. The corridors were too narrow for him to fly, but his sheer size and power made up for it. He barreled through walls and enemies alike, his claws rending steel as if it were paper. When they reached the surface, the Eclipse was already waiting. Leah motioned for Dracos to follow as she sprinted toward the ship. "You expect me to fit in that?" he rumbled. "Just try not to burn it," she shot back. With surprising agility, Dracos folded his wings and squeezed into the ship's cargo bay. As soon as the ramp closed, Leah slammed her hand on the controls, the Eclipse blasting off just as Syndicate ships appeared on the horizon. Inside the ship, Dracos sat curled in the bay, his breathing heavy. For the first time, Leah saw something besides fury in his eyes' relief. Gratitude. "You risked much for me," he said, his voice softer now. "Why?" Leah hesitated, her fingers hovering over the ship's controls. "Because no one deserves to live like that. Not even you." Dracos tilted his head, considering her. "Perhaps. There is more to your kind than I believed." As the Eclipse soared into the endless void of space, Leah knew the hard part was just beginning. They had escaped Carrion, but the galaxy would not let Dracos go easily. And Leah wasn't about to let the galaxy win. The Syndicate's retaliation came faster than Leah anticipated. Barely a day after their escape from Carrion, the Eclipse was already under siege. The sleek, modified freighter darted through the dense asteroid field of the Zorath Belt, plasma bolts streaking past its hull. Syndicate ships, their jagged designs as menacing as their reputation, swarmed in pursuit. "Rook! Where's my shield boost?" Leah barked, her hands flying over the controls. "Recalibrating. Unless you want the shields to short out entirely, I suggest you keep dodging," the AI replied sharply. A deafening roar filled the ship as Dracos stirred in the cargo bay. The dragon's luminescent scales pulsed faintly, his golden eyes narrowing at the chaos unfolding outside. His plasma breath had left scorch marks on the walls of the bay during their frantic escape, and the confines of the ship barely contained his massive form. "They will not stop," Dracos growled, his voice reverberating through the ship. "Not until we face them." "Face them? Do I look like I can take on a fleet?" Leah snapped back, yanking the controls to avoid another volley of fire. "We're outgunned and outnumbered." Dracos shifted his weight, the floor groaning beneath him. "You freed me from my chains, human. Let me fight." Leah hesitated, her mind racing. The Eclipse wasn't built to handle combat on this scale, and every evasive maneuver only delayed the inevitable. But Dracos. He wasn't just a passenger, he was a weapon, albeit one still recovering from centuries of enslavement. "All right," she said, flipping a switch to open the cargo bay's external hatch. "But don't you dare die on me, dragon." Dracos grinned, his serrated teeth glinting in the dim light. Death would be a kindness compared to captivity. The bay doors opened with a hiss, and Dracos launched himself into the void. His wings unfurled, glowing faintly as he drew on reserves of power long thought dormant. Leah watched from the cockpit as the Syndicate ships turned their attention to him, their weapons locking onto the massive target. But Dracos was no easy prey. With a deafening roar that shook the silence of space, he unleashed a torrent of plasma fire. The lead Syndicate ship exploded in a brilliant cascade of light, debris scattering like confetti. He dove and weaved with surprising agility, his claws tearing through holes while his tail lashed out with devastating force. Leah took the opportunity to pivot the Eclipse into a more advantageous position, her hand steady on the controls. "Rook, we've got a moment." Boost the shields and prep the weapons. Let's give them a taste of their own medicine. You're actually enjoying this, aren't you? Rook quipped. Only when I'm not terrified, Liao replied. As Dracos decimated the smaller ships, Liao brought the Eclipse around to target a frigate attempting to flank him. Her plasma cannons fired in rapid succession, puncturing the frigate's engines and sending it spiraling into an asteroid. The combined assault of the dragon and the freighter began to turn the tide. But the Syndicate wasn't done yet. The flagship, Dreadspire, loomed on the edge of the battlefield. Its size dwarfed the other ships, and its arsenal was enough to level an entire planet. Leah's comm crackled with a chillingly familiar voice. Captain Voss. You've made quite a mess, Malek drawled, his tone venomous. Hand over the dragon, and I might let you live. Leah's jaw tightened. Not a chance. Then die screaming. The Dreadspire fired, its main cannon unleashing a beam of energy that sliced through an asteroid, narrowly missing Dracos. The shockwave sent the Eclipse spinning. Liao fought to stabilize the ship as warning lights blared across her console. Dracos, undeterred, turned his full attention to the flagship. He roared, the sound primal and unrelenting, and charged. Plasma erupted from his maw, colliding with the Dreadspire's shields in a dazzling display of energy. The flagship's defenses held, but the impact rattled its massive frame. Liao, Dracos' voice echoed through the comms, strained but determined. This fight cannot be won through strength alone. What is your plan? Leah's mind raced. The Dreadspire was too powerful for a head-on assault, but its size made it vulnerable in other ways. Her gaze flicked to the asteroid field surrounding them, debris large enough to crush even a ship of that size, if used correctly. Rook, calculate a trajectory for the biggest asteroid you can find, she said. We're going to give them a little present. You're insane, Rook muttered. But I'm on it. As Rook fed her the calculations, Liao piloted the Eclipse into position. Dracos continued his assault, distracting the flagship and buying her the time she needed. The dragon darted between volleys of fire, his plasma breath scorching the Dreadspire's hull. Dracos, pull back on my mark, Liao ordered. Do not hesitate, he warned. This enemy will not. I won't. The asteroid came into view, a massive chunk of rock and ice tumbling through space. Liao fired her ship's grappling beams, attaching them to the asteroid's surface. With a strained groan, the Eclipse began to redirect its trajectory, aiming it directly at the Dreadspire. Now, Dracos! Liao shouted. The dragon veered away, his massive wings carrying him to safety as the asteroid hurtled toward the flagship. Malek's voice erupted over the comms, furious and panicked. You dare dash. The transmission cut out as the asteroid collided with the Dreadspire. The resulting explosion lit up the asteroid field, a supernova of fire and debris. Liao shielded her eyes from the brightness, her heart pounding. When the light faded, the Dreadspire was gone. Dracos re-entered the Eclipse's cargo bay, his scales dimmed but his eyes blazing with triumph. You are clever, human, he said, his voice tinged with respect. Clever and reckless. It's kind of my thing, Liao replied, slumping back in her chair as the adrenaline began to fade. But we're not out of this yet. The Syndicate won't stop coming after us. Dracos nodded solemnly. Then we must ensure they have no place to return to. Leah's gaze met his, and she saw the fire of determination burning in those golden eyes. Together, they had taken down a fleet. But this was only the beginning of their war against the Syndicate, and the galaxy wouldn't soon forget the fury of the freed. The Syndicate's defeat at Zorath Belt sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News of the flagship Dreadspire's destruction spread rapidly, whispered in the shadows of black markets and sung in the cantinas of rebel outposts. To many, the event was a beacon of hope, a dragon and a rogue human daring to challenge an empire. To others, it was a dire warning. But hope and warnings did little to protect Liao and Dracos. They were now the galaxy's most wanted fugitives. The Eclipse, battered from their battle, limped through the outer reaches of the Delvarian sector. Its once sleek hull bore scorch marks and hastily patched breaches, and its engines hummed with an unhealthy rattle. Leah sat in the pilot's chair, her face illuminated by the dim glow of the navigation console. Her eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but her mind raced as she plotted their next move. "We can't keep this up," Rook said, his voice unusually somber. "The Syndicate is regrouping, the Galactic Council has issued a kill order on Dracos, and I'm one overheating circuit away from shutting down." "Thanks for the pep talk," Leah muttered, running a hand through her tangled hair. Dracos stirred in the cargo bay, his massive frame curled uncomfortably in the confined space. "We cannot run forever," he rumbled. His voice, though calm, carried a weight that made the walls tremble. "There is no freedom in flight alone." Leah turned to face him. "I know. But right now, we're outnumbered, outgunned, and on the verge of falling apart. We need allies. And where do you propose we find them?" Rook asked. Leah hesitated before responding. "Zitherus." Dracos's eyes narrowed, his golden gaze locking onto hers. "You speak of the jungle world." "Yes," Leah said. "There are rumors. Rumors that some of your kind survived. If they're out there, they might join us." Dracos remained silent for a moment, his expression inscrutable. Finally, he nodded. "If my kin still live, they must be freed from their shadows. Let us go to Zitherus." The journey to Zitherus took 3 harrowing days. Syndicate scout ships prowled the sector, forcing Leah to take a circuitous route. By the time the Eclipse entered the planet's atmosphere, the ship's fuel reserves were nearly depleted, and the engines groaned in protest. Zitherus was a world of sprawling jungles and towering crystalline trees, their branches glinting in the sunlight like shards of glass. The air was thick with mist, and the distant cries of alien creatures echoed through the canopy. "This place is alive," Dracos murmured as he stepped out of the ship, his wings unfolding slightly to catch the humid air. His scales glimmered faintly in the filtered light, a stark contrast to the dense greenery around them. Leah shouldered her plasma rifle and scanned their surroundings. "Let's hope it stays that way. We're sitting ducks if the Syndicate tracks us here." They ventured deeper into the jungle, following traces of energy signatures that Rook detected a faint pulse that seemed to resonate with Dracos. The journey was treacherous, the jungle was teeming with predators, some larger than the Eclipse. But Dracos's presence was enough to deter even the most fearless beasts. After hours of trekking, they reached an ancient temple buried beneath layers of vines and moss. Its architecture was alien but bore unmistakable signs of dragonkind, carvings of winged creatures, glowing runes etched into the walls, and a central chamber that pulsed with faint energy. "They were here," Dracos said, his voice filled with a mix of awe and sorrow. "My kin." As they explored the temple, a deep voice echoed from the shadows. "You should not have come." Leah spun, her rifle raised. A dragon emerged from the darkness, its scales a deep crimson, its eyes burning with a cold intensity. Unlike Dracos, this dragon bore no signs of captivity, its body was lean and sharp, its movements precise. "Kryn," Dracos said, his voice tinged with recognition. "You live." Kryn snorted, his gaze shifting between Dracos and Leah. "Barely." "And what of you, brother? I see the scars of chains upon you." "I am free now," Dracos said, his tone steady. "As should all of our kind be." "Free?" Kryn sneered. "Do you call this freedom?" He gestured to the jungle around them. "Hiding, scavenging, surviving on scraps while the Syndicate grows fat on our power?" Leah stepped forward. "We're here to change that. To fight back." Kryn's eyes narrowed. "And you think one human and a battered dragon can challenge an empire? You're either a fool or a liar." "I think we've already proved what we can do," Leah shot back. "We took down the Dreadspire. And we're not stopping there. Kryn's expression darkened. You think the Syndicate fears you? They have spent centuries mastering the art of control. Even now, they build a weapon-A device that can enslave entire worlds. It feeds on the essence of dragons. Draco stiffened. What do you mean? They harvest our power, Kryn said. Those who do not submit are drained and discarded. The Syndicate's citadel, Nexus Prime, houses this weapon. Then we destroy it, Dracos growled. Kryn laughed bitterly. You speak of destruction as if it is so simple. Nexus Prime is impenetrable, guarded by fleets and powered by the lives of our kin. Even if you reach it, the cost will be immeasurable. Leah stepped forward, her voice firm. We didn't come here to listen to excuses. We came to find allies. If you won't help us, then get out of our way. Kryn regarded her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he sighed. You have the fire of a warrior, human. But fire alone cannot win this war. He turned to Dracos. If you are determined to fight, then I will not stop you. But do not expect me to follow you to your death. Without another word, Kryn disappeared into the shadows. Leah turned to Dracos. That went well. Dracos's gaze lingered on the temple's carvings. He is right about one thing. The Syndicate's weapon must be destroyed. If it is not, all we have done will mean nothing. Then we'll destroy it, Leah said firmly. With or without him. Dracos nodded. So be it. As they left the temple, Leah couldn't shake the feeling that Kryn's warning carried more truth than she wanted to admit. The Syndicate's weapon wasn't just a tool of oppression, it was the key to their empire. And if they were to stop it, they would have to risk everything. The galaxy had begun to take notice of the dragon and the human who dared to defy an empire. But the battle ahead would test their resolve like never before. The journey to Nexus Prime, the Syndicate's stronghold and the heart of their operation, was fraught with peril. Leah and Dracos had managed to secure a handful of rebel allies, a ragtag fleet of fighters, smugglers, and scavengers drawn together by a shared hatred of the Syndicate. Each ship bore scars of past battles, its crew a mix of seasoned fighters and desperate survivors. The fleet gathered in the shadow of a shattered moon, their ships hidden from Syndicate patrols by its gravitational interference. Leah stood at the Eclipse's holotable, addressing the gathered leaders. Dracos loamed behind her, his massive form radiating quiet authority. Nexus Prime isn't just a fortress, Leah began, her tone firm but grim. It's a death trap. The Syndicate's fleets patrol every approach, and the station itself is powered by their Weapon-A core that harvests energy from enslaved dragons. If we're going to take it down, we need to move fast and hit hard. What's the plan? Asked Jex, a wiry smuggler whose ship, the Sparrow, had narrowly escaped a Syndicate ambush days earlier. We create a diversion, Leah explained, projecting a hologram of Nexus Prime. The station appeared as a sprawling construct, its central spire glowing ominously. The bulk of our fleet will engage their defenses head-on, drawing their ships away from the station. Meanwhile, a smaller team, me, Dracos, and a strike squad will infiltrate the citadel and plant charges on the weapons core. Sounds suicidal, muttered another captain. It is, Leah admitted. But it's our best shot. If we don't destroy that weapon, the Syndicate will keep enslaving entire worlds. We have to end this, here and now. Draco stepped forward, his deep voice cutting through the tension. The Syndicate has thrived on fear and submission. Today, we show them that their reign is over. The assault to battle began with an explosion of chaos. The rebel fleet emerged from hyperspace, their ships immediately engaging the Syndicate's outer defenses. Plasma fire lit up the void as the Syndicate's fleet scrambled to respond, their sleek warships swarming like predators. Leah piloted the Eclipse with practiced precision, weaving through enemy fire as Dracos clung to the ship's hull, ready to launch into the fray. The strike team followed closely in smaller, more maneuverable craft, each ship packed with explosives and specialized equipment. "Diversion's working," Rook reported, his voice crackling through the comms. "The Syndicate's fleet is focusing on the main force. We've got a narrow window to reach the station." "Let's move," Leah said, gripping the controls tightly. "Dracos, you ready?" The dragon's wings unfolded, and he leaped from the eclipse, soaring toward Nexus Prime. Leah and the strike team followed, their ships darting through gaps in the station's defenses. Automated turrets locked onto them, firing relentlessly, but Dracos' plasma breath reduced several to molten scrap. The eclipse landed in a docking bay near the station's central spire. Leah and the strike team disembarked, their weapons drawn as they advanced into the labyrinthine corridors. Dracos followed, his massive presence both a shield and a weapon. "We need to reach the core," Leah said, consulting her holomap. "It's heavily guarded, so expect resistance." The closer they got to the core, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air was thick with heat and the hum of energy, the walls glowing faintly with the weapon's power. Leah's squad encountered fierce resistance syndicate soldiers armed with advanced weaponry, their cybernetic enhancements making them formidable opponents. Dracos tore through their ranks with terrifying efficiency, his claws and plasma breath leaving a trail of destruction. Leah's team fought with equal determination, their weapons blazing as they pushed forward. When they reached the core chamber, Leah froze. The weapon was unlike anything she had imagined. A massive crystalline structure pulsed with energy, tendrils of light snaking out to connect to pods lining the walls. Inside each pod was a dragon, their bodies writhing in agony as their life force was drained to power the weapon. Dracos let out a low, guttural growl, his eyes blazing with fury. "They are killing my kin." "We'll stop it," Leah said, her voice tight with determination. "Rook, guide me through the override sequence while the team plants the charges." As Leah worked to disable the core, Syndicate reinforcements poured into the chamber. The fight was brutal, the air thick with smoke and the sound of weapons fire. Dracos shielded Leah with his body, his plasma breath incinerating wave after wave of attackers. Then, the room trembled. The Syndicate's leader, Malek, entered the chamber, his cybernetic enhancements gleaming. He carried a massive plasma blade, his expression cold and calculating. "You've caused quite the disruption, Captain Voss," Malek said, his voice dripping with contempt. "But it ends here." Dracos lunged at Malek, but the warlord was faster than he appeared. He sidestepped the dragon's attack, his blade slicing through the air with lethal precision. Leah dove for cover, firing her pistol at Malek while shouting orders to her team. The battle raged as Leah scrambled to finish the override. The core's energy pulsed wildly, the tendrils of light faltering as the system destabilized. Dracos roared, his plasma breath narrowly missing Malek as the warlord struck him with a devastating blow. "Dracos!" Leah shouted, her voice breaking with fear. "I am not finished," the dragon growled, rising despite his injuries. With a final, earth-shaking roar, he unleashed a surge of plasma that engulfed Malek, the warlord's cybernetics failing as he was consumed by the fire. "What freedom demands?" The charges were set, and the core's destabilization reached critical levels. Leah's comm crackled as Rook warned, "You need to get out of there now." Leah ran toward Dracos, who was struggling to stand. His scales were scorched, his breathing labored. "We have to go," she shouted. Dracos looked at her, his golden eyes filled with a mix of pain and resolve. "You must live, Leah. The galaxy needs you." "No!" Leah yelled, tears streaming down her face. "Not without you." But Dracos shook his head. "I will ensure the Syndicate never rises again. Go." Before Leah could protest, Dracos turned and unleashed a final blast of plasma at the core. The room trembled violently as the weapon's power overloaded. Syndicate soldiers fled in panic as the entire station began to collapse. Leah's team dragged her back to the Eclipse, their ship barely escaping the explosion. As they watched from a safe distance, Nexus Prime erupted in a brilliant cascade of light, the shockwave scattering the remains of the Syndicate fleet. Dracos was gone. Epilogue: The Legacy of Freedom. The Syndicate's collapse sparked a revolution across the galaxy. Rebel forces rose up, dismantling what remained of their empire. Leah, now a leader among the resistance, dedicated herself to freeing the enslaved and rebuilding what the Syndicate had destroyed. Her ship, newly christened the Dracos, became a symbol of hope. In the skies of liberated worlds, murals of a dragon in flight adorned the buildings, a tribute to the creature who had sacrificed everything for freedom. Leah often looked to the stars, her heart heavy with loss but filled with resolve. Dracos' legacy endured, a reminder that freedom always comes at a cost, but it is a cost worth paying. The galaxy would never forget the dragon and the human who defied an empire. Together, they had changed the stars forever.